Hello, ladies and gentlemen, this is Dan Baum, and welcome to another episode of the Wellness Academy podcast. On our show here at the Wellness Academy, it is my job to distill all things wellness and attempt to break down from all our different coaches, experts, and guests their wisdom and knowledge so you can apply it to your own life. Today's episode is a goodie. I had the pleasure of interviewing Robert Kearney, aka the world's strongest gay. Rob Kearney is a World Strongman finalist. I think it's the Australian Arnold Classic champion from earlier on this year, and an openly gay strongman, the only one. He was so inspirational to talk to. I had a phenomenal time getting the chance to speak to him. Just some of the things that he's used to fuel his training, his motivations, the things he's dealt with, just super inspirational, and a lot of things that I took away from it for the first time really for me, especially from a mindset perspective as well as the actionable takeaways. I really enjoyed talking to Rob, and I can't wait for you guys to hear this one. On today's episode, we also have a very special sponsor. At the Wellness Academy, we are part podcast and also part event host, part coach, part online coach, part nutritional advice, part life advice, etc., etc. And our first exclusive retreat is being launched January the 31st and February the 1st, 2020 at Cotswold House in Chipping Campden in the Cotswolds. For more information, please head to our Instagram account at Wellness Academy Social or at Cotswold House Hotel, or head to them on email and telephone. The details will be in the bottom of this podcast in the notes. The event is going to be a fantastic exclusive retreat across 2 days in the wonderful Cotswolds at Cotswold House Hotel. Without dragging this promo out too far, please check out more info with us, and hopefully we will see you guys in person, me included, at Cotswold House on January the 31st. Please let me know what you think. And as usual, like, subscribe, share, review, blah, 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 blah. Please help us support the channel and keep these super cool guests coming, and we'll see you on the next one. So, Rob Kearney, welcome to the Wellness Academy podcast. Thank you for taking time out, which is early in the morning where you are, to do this with us. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to do it. I'm usually up early in the morning. My husband, he leaves for work at 6 a.m. So, naturally by association, I wake up with him. So, it's not too bad to schedule these things this early.
I know that, particularly with your Instagram account, I've loved telling people your Instagram name since I've organised doing this podcast with you. It's been brilliant because everyone goes, "What?" And I'm like, no, yeah, he genuinely is the world's strongest gay. Like, that's why his Instagram account is that, it is what it says on the tin. So I appreciate that's going to be something that you've been talking about for the last 5 years now. I did a quick look back on some research, and you came out to the Huffington Post back in 2014. Just out of curiosity, why was it the Huffington Post that got the scoop?
So it was actually, I actually came out via a Facebook post, like a Man Crush Monday. And from there it went super viral, which was totally unexpected. A friend of ours, he decided to just write a little article about it. Once that article went live on the internet, within maybe 48 hours, that's when the interview requests started coming through from places like TMZ, Huffington Post. Conan O'Brien was talking about us on his show.
Oh, cool.
It literally went from 0 to 100 overnight. And at that point, Joey and I had only been dating for about 6 weeks.
Whoa.
Yeah. So if anybody, listening to this wants a way to put a brand new relationship under a shit ton of stress really quickly, have some monumental, proclamation that quick. And that's the way to do it. Luckily he didn't get scared off and he stuck around. So
good man, Joey. And how's that been then? In terms of your, just out of curiosity, your relationship together with general stresses of relationships, general stresses of you doing a job that's super unique now. And I had a quick look back. You were the director of sports medicine at a university.
It was a boarding school. It was high school. Yeah.
So you were trying to do that and be a strongman, I imagine, for quite a long time.
Yeah, I did that for 6 years.
And then, so all of these normal stresses, add to that, you know, you're in a job. It's quite interesting in a sense that, like, stereotypically, granted, it's less of a stereotype now. One, because it's 2019, and two, because of you. But stereotypically, a strong man is, do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
not. But then again, it's interesting, like, thinking about this interview, about some of my own biases that you pick up through 33 years of life that aren't correct. They're just things that you pick up from your parents or from society or from friends. Not that a gay man is not like, you can be a gay man and be that, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's this weird trying to think about it. But I guess at the same time, like, what's been important for you, do you think, in terms of managing that relationship with Joey? You mean you guys made it through till now? You're still together? This is your husband, I'm assuming?
Yeah. We just got married this past March.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How was that inside that first? The furor died down maybe after 6 months or a year, I don't know. But how did that work?
Well, I kind of threw him right into the fire because we met, like any millennial couple, via a dating app. And so we did that. And at that time, I was actually cutting weight for 105 America's Strongest Man. It was my first America's Strongest Man appearance. And we went on our first date 2 weeks before that contest. So we met, and I told him, I do this sport called strongman. And of course, he looked at me and said, "What the fuck is that?" So tried to fill him in as much as possible. 2 weeks later, fly out to Vegas. And at this point, I was still in the closet, wasn't out to anybody. Go compete, ended up taking second place. Come home, and he's like, "Oh, so I guess you're pretty good at this thing." And, it was weird over, because he's seen me progress from, I was pro as a 105 when we met.
What do you weigh now?
So right now I'm about 127.
And is that competition weight for you, or do you cut weight to go to the big events?
No, I pretty much stay around this weight. At this level, I'm the smallest guy competing, essentially. So when he's seen my progression through the sport. I got to do the Arnold South Africa that year, and it's just kind of progressed ever since then. So Joey's been there the entire time, and managing this sport where I'm traveling all over the world with, like you said, doing a full-time job. Now, boarding school life is amazing. I absolutely loved my job. Joey and I lived in a dormitory with 51 boys, that were all around between the ages of like 16 and 18. Had a great relationship with them. I was a director of sports medicine, so I saw these kids on the athletic fields when they're playing sports. I had, and I'm younger. I'm only 28 now, and I was 26 and 27 doing that job. So I had an awesome relationship with these kids. Kind of like the big brother type relationship, and it was hard to leave the job just because I loved it so much. But with what I was doing, it was nearly impossible to stay at this level of competition. My average work day was, my work week was Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And then would have to fit my training in around that. Now, the gym I go to is actually 45 minutes away from where I live. So I'd get off of work at 8, get to the gym by 9 p.m., train until 11, get home by midnight, then do the same thing, and I did that for almost 6 years. And then Sunday was considered my day off, quote unquote, but I was actually on duty in the dorm Sunday nights from 7 p.m. to midnight. So I pretty much only had Sunday morning and afternoon off from work during the academic year. So it's from September until the end of May. So I was able to manage it for a while, but, it got really exhausting, essentially, coming over to the UK for the log press championships. I would have to take like a Friday morning flight, get there Friday night, compete Saturday, and then I'm home on Sunday. So it was just madness.
Well, I did my first trip to California earlier on this year, and the time difference, like that 8 hours and the 11-hour flight, ruined me. So I don't know how that works if you do that type of flight in a small space of time. But and again, I have to repeat myself sometimes on these podcasts, like I'm not a scientist or I'm not a doctor, and I don't play one on the internet. But I have heard that when you do a long haul flight, the effects on, like the radiation effects on your body, are kind of like having X amount of X-rays or something, I've heard. But whether or not that's true, I definitely have felt from a point of view personally, when I do this long haul flight, and I'm not trying to compete in strongman events. Like I'm literally just trying to go and have a good time on holiday, maybe do a bit of CrossFit or go to the gym or walk around. Do you know what I mean? So I hate to think what that would have been like, just as one example.
Yeah, I've kind of got accustomed to it, like how to train my body during the flight and kind of get accustomed to the time change. But essentially for me, it's work. It's not relaxation when I go on these trips. So, for example, I did the Arnold Australia back in March, and we flew in the day before the contest. We flew to Australia, and for us, that's, from Massachusetts to California is a 7-hour flight, and then California to Australia is another 15. And we were only in Australia for 5 days. So, and in that time, I managed to win the Arnold Australia, and we got married, and then we flew home. So it was a roller coaster of a weekend, to say the least.
Which one came first, winning the Arnold or getting married? Like in the chronology of the event?
Winning the Arnold. So we landed in Australia on a Thursday, and a Thursday morning. On that day, we met with our videographer, our justice of the peace, and our photographer for the wedding. Competed Friday, Saturday, had the award ceremony Saturday night, got married on Sunday, and then flew home on Tuesday morning. So,
what would you have been like at the wedding if you hadn't have won, or like you'd have had a miserable performance? Would you have sucked as a groom?
That was a big conversation, but my outlook was, you know what? Regardless, I'm getting married, so it's going to be an amazing trip, regardless of how the contest went. The icing on the cake was winning. And, the cool story about that is, Arnold actually, celebrated our wedding with us, which was crazy.
Wow.
Getting my trophy with him on Saturday night, he just happened to ask what we had planned for the rest of the weekend. So, standing in front of a few thousand people, I told him, well, we're actually getting married tomorrow. He actually got a little mad at me at the fact that I didn't ask him to be our celebrant to marry us. So, but, he wasn't able to come to the actual wedding, but instead, the night of our wedding, he made me cancel my dinner reservations, and ended up he chartered a yacht for us that night, and took us on a 2-hour, yacht tour of the city of Melbourne, and then took us out to dinner that night as well.
Wow.
So, to say the least, we're walking back from dinner that night, and Joey looks at me and goes, so it's pretty much downhill from here, isn't it? Get married and get to spend the night with Arnold Schwarzenegger the same day. There really is no going up from there. So, but
you said, wait till you see what it's like being married to me.
We'd already lived together for like 4.5 years, so we know what spectacular. So it's been, getting back to the original point, Joey's been amazing in transitioning through this. All the while he's still finishing graduate school. he's getting his master's degree right now. So he's been doing all this and traveling with me to competitions and, you know, essentially living through my stresses while going through his own of getting a master's degree.
What's he studying?
So he's studying occupational therapy. So, you know, which is fantastic. He actually wants to become a certified hand therapist. So just work orthopedic rehab from the shoulder down to the hand. Super specialized. There's a certain certification that he has to get after he becomes a board certified occupational therapist. So it's pretty intense, but he loves it and he's really excited about it. So, you know, we're counting down the days. He has 2 weeks left of his master's program. So it's both of us are just, you know, so happy it's almost over.
Cool. Yeah, amazing. That must be kind of, you talk about the length of time that you train for specific events and the build up to it, but like, how long is his master's? Has that been what, 2, 3, 4 years?
2.5 years.
So like, I'm working my backside off for all this time, and now he's 2 weeks away. That's so cool.
2 weeks away. Yeah. You know, it's funny, you know, we joke around like, you know, we live a pretty awesome life at the fact that we get to travel the world, and, you know, the entire time we've known each other, we've been living off of one salary essentially. So when we met, I was in grad school getting my master's degree in sports medicine. When I finished, he started. So we just kind of switched places, and you know, so we joke around, you know, like we're gonna be quote unquote real people when he gets, you know, and then he finally gets a job and have 2 salaries, and we're not gonna know what to do. But it's gonna be really nice to not have that added stress where he can actually just go to work and not have other shit to do when he comes home. Because, you know, as any, you know, partner, as any great partner is, you know, he's stressed when I compete and train because he wants to see me do well. So to not have the added stress of academics on top of it is going to be really great for him.
And of course, like the difference with when he's watching you compete, like he's got absolutely zero control of being able to affect, like, yes, he can have an effect on your mental game and so on and so forth, but he can't be on the floor lifting those weights for you. I mean, even if he wanted to, I imagine he probably has no chance of lifting any of the weights that you lift.
You know,
and then if you're negatively impacted by, I'm sure there are poor performances, do you know what I mean? And like, I don't know what your injury record is like. He's got to try and manage you so it is I'm sure it's very tough.
Yeah, it's essentially a full-time job when you marry a strongman. You know, but, you know, fortunately he's only missed, I think, 2 or 3 contests in the time we've been together. So he knows the sport just as well as anybody else, and he knows how to handle me during the contest, which is really big. You know, when he first came to shows, you know, I'm emotional, you know, when I compete, not when I train. You know, when I train, I mean, people watch my YouTube videos. The way I tell people is like, you know, when I train and I'm in the gym, every lift I do is an expectation. You know, I never step into a gym and go for a PB. I never step into the gym and think, oh, I think I'll get this weight. For me, if it's in the program, it's an expectation to lift that weight. That's why I never really get excited when I train and hit, you know, I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, I hit a deadlift PB in the middle of training.
Go on. What was it?
It was, let me do a quick kilo conversion. It was 815 pounds. So it was 370.5 for a triple. And
what was your last one?
So my 1 rep max is 440. I hit that at Giants Live Wembley just this past summer.
Nearly 3 times mine, but we won't talk about that. Like, we'll move on. It's fine. It's fine.
And you know, for me, like, I always perform really well at shows, typically. And so for me to hit, you know, like a big deadlift like that in training was uncharacteristic. Yeah, and that's usually not where my training goes. You know, Derek Poundstone is my coach. And,
okay.
You know, he's smart when it comes to programming. And, you know, one thing with me being at such a high level is he doesn't program numbers for me to hit every day. It's pretty much just based off of feel. And that's why when I go into a session, every lift is an expectation because it's based on how I feel. But when I compete, I'm extreme, I'm emotional. I get really excited. I get upset if I don't do well, if I don't reach that level of expectation that I have. So Joey knows how to work me essentially when I compete. If I have a bad event, he knows to maybe give me 5 minutes to cool down and then come talk to me. But the thing is, with his degree and what he does, we dissect it a little bit after the event. Be like, okay, this is what went wrong. This is what you need to do. Screw that event. It's over. You
Mm-hmm.
have X amount of events left. Focus on these. This is where you need to make points. So he's great when it comes to that and kind of keeping my head on straight. No pun intended.
How many events are typically at a strongman event, like the Worlds, the Arnold, and so on?
You know, it's changed so much now. A typical strongman event is 5 events.
Okay. Across how long? Like, I'm assuming just the one day.
One day.
Yeah.
The Arnold in Ohio is now 6 events over 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 3 events one day, 3 events the next. World's Strongest Man, the qualifiers are 5 events over 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Finals are 5 events over 1 or 2 days, depending on the setup. And then you have other competitions. So there's competitions like the Arnold Canada, one of the qualifying events for Ohio, where they do 8 events in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
4 and 4. There's a competition that's coming back this year called Fortissimus. That was originally run in 2008 and 2009. And it hasn't been run since. It's up in Canada as well. And that's 12 events in 2 days.
Oh.
It just.
Are you going to try and do that just to see what that's like, or do you think that's a bad idea?
I did get the invite to do that contest, so obviously I said yes.
When's that?
It's going to be in September of 2020. So it's going to be ridiculous, and especially with Derek Poundstone as my coach. He won this competition back in, I want to say 2009. So there's some sentimental value there as well.
Talk about a name that's fit into like being a strongman. Like, I don't know, just Derek Poundstone just seems like I am a strongman. I throw around stones like girl. It's just really funny.
Yeah.
How does the degree that you've got in sports medicine factor into what you do? Like, do you think that's given you any kind of edge? Like, is there anything specific that you've taken away from that degree to implement into your life and training, or is it just strongman is so different to the sports medicine that you studied because it's so unique that it's not quite as applicable as it would be with another sport?
No, it's been great. The thing about, sports is I think they're universal and the human body is pretty much made up the same way. So with my understanding of anatomy, physiology, and how the body works, it's helped me out a lot. I had 2, I'd say minor injuries, even though they required surgery when I was young. I was 18 and 19. I tore the meniscus in both my knees just because I was dumb.
What did you do?
Well, it both happened when I was back squatting. But
Okay.
it simply was my mentality. I had that more is better mentality. I needed to train all the time. I didn't need rest and all this bullshit.
Yeah.
And that caused me to, have technique breakdowns because I was exhausted and going way heavier than I needed to. So I had small tears in my meniscus, quick surgery, back in 4 to 6 weeks, no big deal.
Okay.
So when it comes to like overuse injuries or when something does hurt, I'm generally good with it. But I also joke around as, I will tell somebody what to do to make their injury better, but I won't do it myself. People get on me all the time that I to be honest, I don't really stretch and I don't do that much mobility work.
You've just ruined one of my questions I had in a little while. Cheers for that, Rob. Appreciate that.
But I do get a massage every week. I do get physio done every week. And it's, but I think it's definitely helped. 2018, I had my first real big injury when competing in the sport. I was actually competing against Laws. Him and I were first and second going into the stones at Giants Live North America last year, and the first stone fell onto my chest after I attempted loading it, and ended up breaking 3 ribs, and I tore the QL in my low back. But the nice thing is, like, I was able to self-diagnose it pretty much on the spot. I knew it was wrong. So right after that happened, I took a few breaths and I got on the phone with my orthopedic and I was like, hey,
You didn't try and do any more stones, right? Or did you?
No, I stopped after that because
Okay.
I knew I couldn't win.
It wouldn't surprise me. bit like strongman competitors do some things that just obvious. Like I'm going to mention it now, just 'cause it's kind of interconnected to what we're talking about. But one of the things that's always I watch it and I'm like, oh my god! Like I watched your video of you doing the log lift record, like the American. I'm assuming it's Big Z that's still got the world record.
Yep, he does.
Which has stood for like a crazy long time, right? Because
he's had the world record since I want to say the early 2000s.
Yeah.
He's just increased it on himself every single year. So the last time his last world record that he hit was, I believe, 2015. Was 228.
Okay, wow. And when you watch that, so I'm going to assume that the people that listen to this probably know some of the ways that you lift the log, aka to get it over your head, you can press it, push jerk it, or split jerk it predominantly. You split jerked 214 freaking kilos. I'm like, oh my god. But it's more the rolling it from the classic strongman belly up to the shoulders, and then you've got this huge log forcing your head to do this, so your spine isn't in the alignment that really it wants to be, because it wants to be in a straight line, and then you've got to try and shove this gigantic thing out the way of your chin above your head. It's always intrigued me and baffled me and amazed me that every time a strongman lifts from stomach to shoulder and tries to get over the head, they just don't snap their spine in half.
It's funny, so like I got into strongman because of CrossFit, actually. And that's where I learned a lot of my basic lifting technique. And for me,
say that again, because I think our connection, just when you said, you must have said something, then said that's where you learned your technique. I think it lost what you said, where you learned it.
I got into strongman because of CrossFit.
Oh wow, okay.
Back in 2009. CrossFit. And that, like I said before, that's where I learned like most of my basic lifting technique.
And who was inspiring you back in 2009? Who did you like?
Strongman wise?
No, as in like when you were watching CrossFit, like I'm trying to think who was, because I got into it.
This was the first, 2009 was the first year of the CrossFit Games.
Oh, wow.
That was when it was at the ranch. It was Jason Khalipa. It was all the OGs of CrossFit.
Yeah.
So like there was, I think, God, when I joined that CrossFit gym, I want to say there was only like 100 boxes. It was super small still. So I learned really quickly that I sucked overhead. And I didn't want to suck at it. So that's when I was taught like the push jerk and the split jerk. And I was like, oh, this is way easier. I'm just going to get better at this instead of actually getting stronger overhead.
Okay.
And that's, obviously evened out over the years. And, but it's, it's always funny, because I get more shit than anybody when it comes to overhead, because I do have the American record with a split jerk. And I can't tell you the amount of times that people say, well, it shouldn't count as an overhead lift. It shouldn't count for the log press world record because I technically don't press anything over my head.
No, you did. But anyway.
Yeah, thank you. And, it's just funny because, you got guys like Eddie Hall posting my video on his Instagram and, in his description said, if anybody thinks the split jerk is really that easy, go into the gym tomorrow, hit a PB and send me your video.
What do you think you're doing with your legs? Like, yeah, you might not be strictly pressing it with just your shoulders, but like to get that weight from this place here to a safe place kind of here and get underneath it and use it, it's just unbelievable.
It's always funny when I see like heavyweight strongmen that have been in the game for a while try to do a split jerk. They look like a baby deer that was just born. Tough
technique, really tough technique.
And that's what I tell people. I think that a strongman strict pressing and a strongman split jerking are equally as impressive.
Oh yeah.
Because one is raw strength and power, and that's just mind-boggling. You watch the Vicus press, you watch Eddie press, it's crazy. But I can tell you right now, and I would be willing to bet any amount of money, if Eddie Hall and I went head-to-head right now in a log press split jerk, he wouldn't be able to split nearly as much as he could strict press. And it's because it comes down to technique, and, disclaimer, I love Eddie. He's a friend of mine.
Disclaimer, I don't want to be connected with insulting Eddie Hall on my podcast. It was Rob Kearney. You all heard it.
It's not an insult. It's just
Eddie,
the
you're
truth.
the man. No, I'm just playing.
But so it's just funny to me when people, like I said, give me shit for split jerking and they say it's not that, it's not an actual press. I say, fuck you, go ahead and try it yourself.
It's funny because the stereotypical strongest man event, like from an outside looking in perspective, is the Atlas Stones. Like that's the classic strongman event. It's the thing that is not I don't know if it's unique to strongman, but it's not
iconic. It's iconic.
Iconic. Yeah, it's and it's. I was watching a video that Eddie did with a guy, Ross Edgley. Have you heard of Ross? So Ross has been really prevalent since swimming around Great Britain last year. Didn't touch land for 160-ish days. I really should have checked that before I said that out loud, shouldn't I? But a long time, literally like swimming for 6 hours with the tide, sleeping for 6 hours, swimming for 6 hours with the tide, sleeping for 6 hours, all the way around the coast of Great Britain.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But he's like, his thing is that he's not strictly built for swimming according to the stereo. Like he doesn't look like Michael Phelps, for example. Like Michael Phelps, tall, lean, etc. Like Ross is shorter and unbelievably, he's like hench. He might be as wide as you, I don't know, but he's like, do you know what I mean? Long story short, did a couple of videos recently with Eddie, because obviously Eddie's background was swimming. Like he was an unbelievable swimmer.
Yeah, naturally.
And they did, I think, 3 parts. 1, they both went swimming. 2, they had an eating competition to see who could eat more calories. Ross was with Eddie at Strength Asylum in Stoke. Eddie's like, go on then, Ross, let's see you do an Atlas stone. And he was like, whoa, put that freaking stone down before you tear your biceps. Because there's a significant amount of technique involved in this classic strong. To have a negative about a split jerk, because strongman is all about technique. Every strongman event, if you've got poor technique, that's when your back does snap in half, or you have an injury, or you never lift again. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I'm with you.
It's just, the irony of, I guess keyboard warriors. That's why I don't really lose any sleep over it.
Very true.
At the end of the day, I'm putting more weight overhead than they're deadlifting, most likely. So
putting more weight over your head than I'm deadlifting, that's for sure. But I don't do the keyboard warrior thing. So yeah. What do you think then, as far as, because I remember watching you at the 2018 Worlds, I think it was. That was, I think, Thor's year.
Yep.
And like we were talking just before I started recording the podcast together, like the UK gets these events like really far behind. So I know from Instagram that Martins Lissis won this last strongman final. I don't know who came second. I don't know who came third. I don't know how you got on. I like etc. I can remember seeing you at the 2018 because I'm pretty sure that was the year that you had the Pride Mohawk, I think.
No, that was this year.
Oh, that was this year. Okay, yeah. So on Instagram.
2018 was a shit year for me at Worlds.
But I remember watching you, and you still, either you did do well in the log press, or I remember the commentary talking that you would do well because it's a good event for you, but you had a bad day. Which one was it?
The latter.
The latter.
Yeah, 2018 Worlds was weird for me. 2017 was my first year at Worlds. My entire goal when I went was just have fun and learn. And that's exactly what I did.
Yeah,
2018, I was like, okay, second year, got a year under my belt. Let's push it, kind of go for it. Had that bigger is better mentality, so I bloated up to about 135 of just shit weight, to be totally honest. I looked horrible. I wasn't that strong, and I could barely move. And that's what completely worked against me. We were in the Philippines. It was hot. It was humid.
Yeah,
it was disgusting. Warming up for the first event, I partially tore the muscle belly in my bicep. And of course, that day we had a sandbag carrying load and Conan's wheel. So, no biceps whatsoever. Joke. And, just I think mentally I was in a shit place. So the log was the final event of the qualifiers going before the stones was talked up. You know, me and Matthias Belsack were going head to head. He's a great log presser. I'm a great log presser. And I had a horrible performance. And that's when it was that year at Worlds that I realized I needed to change some shit. And that's when I reached out to Derek Poundstone to start coaching me. That's when I got a nutrition coach. That's when I started getting physio every week. And it completely transformed my entire career to having a great 2019 season.
And you won the Arnold in Australia.
Yeah, so that was, right after Worlds. Then I had Giants Live North America, had that back injury that I talked about before. Rehab that, work with Derek. And the Arnold Australia was actually my first contest back from injury. Won that 2 weeks later, head over to Leeds, England to break the American log press record. And then World's Strongest Man happened after that. And it was my best performance at World's Strongest Man ever.
Okay.
And I just barely missed making the finals. The way I have a little bit of an issue with the way Worlds is set up, with the last man standing event.
Okay. Which is?
So the last man standing event is the stone over bar event, head to head against another athlete. It's second and third place from your qualifying heat. Go head to head, just passing a stone back and forth over a bar. And the person that fails first loses. Whoever wins automatically goes to the finals. And that is regardless of the points between second and third place.
Okay.
And that's where my issue lies. So, I know you haven't seen World's Strongest Man yet.
Yeah,
If you don't want me to
would it
spoil
help it to, no. It's got I genuinely have no idea when it's on in the UK. It might be soon. I think they like to sometimes do it over the Christmas period. Like that, maybe it's why they wait. Like, who knows? It could even be on, like, because Channel 5 is where it normally airs. There's not a lot on Channel 5 that I would watch other than Strongman. So I don't even get to see the adverts. Mainly I get to see it when the strongmen that I follow start showing on their Instagram, guys, it's on, UK TV, such and such a time. So I don't know. Maybe it's on soon, maybe it isn't. But feel free. I know that, but like I say, I have no idea who came second or third. I have no idea how close the competition was.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I was 1 point away from beating Thor in the qualifying group.
Oh, wow.
And going into that final event, the last man standing event, I had a 3-point lead over Luke Stoltman. And Luke is one of my best friends, and an amazingly good stone loader. So I knew that was going to be hard to beat him to make it to the finals. And so my issue lies with the fact that having a 3-point lead did me no good in that event. And screwed over a couple of people, myself included, that, there was another competitor who had a 7-point lead going into that event. So mathematically there should be no way for him to not make the final. And he didn't make the final because of the stone event. So the fact that everything, weighs on one event, really sucks, to put it lightly. And, so that's how I missed out on the final. We had a 180 kilo stone for reps. I did 9 reps, and Luke got me on the 10th, and that's when I failed. So to just narrowly miss making the finals of World's Strongest Man, when that was my goal all year long, by such a narrow margin after working so hard, having the best performance of my career, was a tough pill to swallow, to say the least. Yeah.
I think I was talking to Loz about this. Like, I'm curious because, I remember, like, for example, like throwing it back to CrossFit. Like, you watch the CrossFit Games, and I think I started really getting into watching it when Rich Froning won his 3rd of his 4 consecutive, and watching that 4th one, like that's the one that they did the documentary of, that's on iTunes and Netflix and so on. And like, he's having a really bad time for the majority of that competition, but then just absolutely nails it on that like 4th and final, this Sunday, and he wins his 4th champs. I remember watching that as a novice, saying to the guys I was training with at my CrossFit gym, like, what's going on with Rich? Like, what's going on? And they were all like, oh, he'll be fine. Don't worry. So it's like this understanding of how the CrossFit Games works. But I watch strongman events with a similar misunderstanding, like a lack of understanding in that, you know, I assume you have to be well-rounded. But I don't know enough about the guys that win. Like, you know, Thor looked destined to win it for a long time, but seemed to always be struggling. You know, Eddie was happy to win the one and then go, cool, like, that's my goal. Like, I'm happy with one. Brian, I was talking to Loz about it. Brian's obviously going to be a legend in strongman for the rest of time. But then, like, watching it as an outsider the last 2 or 3 times, looks like maybe he's not done as well, and I've no idea why. Like, because I don't follow it intrinsically as such. So I guess, like, yeah, my eventual question: where do you see yourself having to be better to do better? Like, what? Like, obviously, if we discount 2019, because it sounds like you practically deserved to be there, and a format of an event held you back. Like, that's what it sounds like. But if you were going to go, right, what's my goal for 2020? What do I need to do to get there? Like, what does that look like for you?
To me, it's really 2 events. You know, I consider myself a really, really well-rounded, you know, strongman athlete. And there seems to be just 2 events that really kick me in the ass every time. And that's vehicle pulls.
Yeah.
And then throwing events, you know, being a 5'10", you know, decently short, chubby white dude, you know, I don't exactly scream explosiveness. So those are always kind of my Achilles heel, you know, and that's what got me at World's Strongest Man this year. You know, I took 5th place on the truck pull, and Thor took 4th place on another event, and that's that 1 point that cost me.
Yeah,
you know,
cool.
The win of my qualifying group. Me taking 5th place, and I say 1 point. That 1 point equated to 6 inches.
Oh God, yeah.
On the truck pull event. So I missed winning my qualifying group and beating Thor by 6 inches. And I think that's the hardest thing. The hardest
you got
to follow.
Confidence from that, though, right?
What was that?
You got to take confidence from that, though, right? Like, you look at from the outside looking in. Yes, part of it is because Thor, how he got the deal to be the Mountain in Game of Thrones, I don't know. But I mean, he's a character called the Mountain, and Thor looks like a mountain, so maybe it's as simple as that. But like, he's a legend as far as current World's Strongest Man competitors. He's probably the most well-known. You need this much. Well, I mean, 6 inches is a bit more than that, as we know. But like my point is that when you pull a truck for that far, that 6 inches is the difference, arguably, between one more breath, one more last strong pull, and you nearly did it. You know, but like that's cool.
You know, it's like the saying goes. You know, you'd rather miss by a mile than an inch, and that's exactly what happened. You know, I mean, it's absolutely exciting to see how far I progressed in 1 year. You know, from going to taking dead last in my qualifying group to nearly winning my qualifying group by beating Thor and making the finals is amazing. But to me, I look at the final end result, and the end result was I didn't make the finals. And I went from possibly winning my group to taking 3rd place in my group. And I'm not okay with that. You know, and I think that's why I've progressed pretty well in the sport. I think that's why I've gotten to this level, is because I'm a stubborn bitch. You know, and I have high expectations of myself, and that's why I've been able to get to this level. That's why, you know, I started strongman as a U90, and a lot of people don't realize that. You know, and then I progressed to 105, and then I moved up to, you know, the open class. So I didn't get good at this sport overnight. You know, it took me 8 years to get to World's Strongest Man. And it's because I was never satisfied with where I was at that time in the sport. And I think that's why, you know, I've gotten to this level and been able to do things like do the things that I have done, especially being such a small guy.
I'm guessing the goal is to win, right?
I mean, that's anybody's goal, I think. You know, I think if anybody doesn't say that and they get into the sport of strongman and want to compete at this level, they're a lying sack of shit.
Yeah. Because it would be pretty damn cool to be literally the world's strongest gay. I mean, you are anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, no,
how amazing for what you've had to go through and represent and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and I wanted to ask you, to be fair, like, because
Bummer. Long pause.
yeah, it disappeared on us there, Rob, for about 20 seconds. I'll do, in my head, I'll do like a 1, 2, 3 count. I know exactly what I was about to say, so I should be able to get the guy that edits that to sort that out, no problem.
Great.
So 2019 is an unbelievable time to be alive. Yes, we can make the decision to look at some of the negatives. I mean, I've no idea how you feel about president, but we won't talk about that too much on the podcast. But I imagine this is the best time to come out and be accepted, because it's far more accepting in general on planet Earth now. But at the same time, you know, I imagine you've experienced your fair share of kind of discrimination and negativity and so on. But like, so how unbelievably cool it would be for gay people to say, our guy is the world's strongest man. Like, that would be amazing.
You know, I think it definitely is easier for people to come out now, but I think, you know, also the reverse side of that is a lot of people feel that they have, you know, they have some balls, I guess is the best way to put it. So the opposition is much more outspoken than normal as well. And so we're seeing kind of both ends of the sword, you know, to put it in a way. But, you know, I think, you know, that would be a dream come true to win World's Strongest Man, you know, especially representing the LGBTQ community. You know, I deal with hateful shit on social media literally on a daily basis, whether it be messages or comments. You know, it's just a part of me being, you know, I say unapologetically openly gay. You know, and that just comes with the territory, and I get that and I accept it. And you know, unlike a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people that are, you know, quote unquote famous that refuse to read the negative comments or just ignore them. I read every single one of them. So if you're listening to this and you hate me and you message me, I'm probably going to read it, give you a big middle finger at my phone, and then not respond to you. But I use those. I use all those messages and those comments, you know, because to me, there is no bigger fuck you in the world to those people than me winning. And I use that as motivation every single day when I step into the gym and I train. I use that hate to fuel my passion for the sport and my passion for advocacy. And it's been so amazing. And then, you know, then I get the opposite as well. You know, I get so much love and so many amazing messages in my Instagram, you know, DMs and on Facebook. You know, I honestly, right now, I probably have over 200 message requests and messages of people coming out to me before they've even like come out to the world, and or their family even, you know. So it's, you know, for me to be doing something like that and for it to be that powerful for other people, it means more than anything I'll do in the sport, you know. And, you know, with me and the possibility of, you know, winning World's Strongest Man one day, that's just the icing on the cake.
That's super cool. Very cool. Getting back to some of your stuff regarding your training and the differences that you've made over the last kind of 12, 18 months, 2 years, etc. As far as like your nutrition, your recovery, how you manage the consistent travel, like what you do as a guy that sits in an airplane seat, and I don't care what airplane seat it is, you're going to be struggling for room. Like, how do all those things, like what give me, I don't know, the low fruit that comes to mind straight away that you think has made the biggest difference? Like, if someone is listening and they're interested in because what you do to be a better strongman can often be applied to being a better athlete. So like let's speak to the people that are listening from that sort of, you know, part of the world or whatever, and what kind of things have made the biggest difference for you?
You know, for me, it's been consistency in all aspects of my life. And I think you know, to get to this level of a sport, regardless of any sport that it is, it's not going to happen overnight. If you want to be great at something, it takes a fucking long time and it's annoying as hell. But you know, for me and what I've learned in the past year and a half, essentially, of training with Derek, you know, Poundstone, and having nutrition coaches and getting weekly physio sessions, it's the accumulation of all of those things put together that creates, you know, the ideal package. And that's something I ignored for a long time. You know, for me, I never really took care of my nutrition like I should have. I never took care of my body like I should have, but I'd always work my ass off in the gym. But finally, putting all the puzzle pieces together is what's kind of translated into me being a great strongman athlete. When it comes to travel, you know, I mean, I had the best performance of my life in Australia, and it was the longest trip I've ever done with the shittiest travel conditions. I mean, you know, I fly economy when I travel to these. Joey comes with me, which means I take up half of his seat and I'm taking up half of the aisle. Try to sleep and I'm getting hit by the drink cart, getting hit by people walking by. You know, so, but, you know, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before with my training is I have a certain level of expectation of myself when I go compete and when every time I step into the gym. And I don't let anything get in the way of that. Even my wedding, you know, I think back to when Joey and I were in Australia meeting with, you know, all of our people for the wedding that was going to happen the day after my competition. And I was kind of a prick, simply because I was thinking about the competition because that was happening before. And that was on my mind why we were going to Australia in the first place. It's not that I wasn't invested in the wedding. It's not that I wasn't, you know, excited for it or, you know, love my husband.
Of course.
It was, I have a job to do before this happens.
I want to win strongman event.
And, you know, so I think I think a lot of it comes down to mindset. And I think that's where a lot of people have trouble, you know, especially in strength sports. You know, strength sports are a bitch. It's not easy to get good at. There's few and far between athletes that just kind of are good at it and get to a high level in a short amount of time. Most of us work a long time to do this. And I think people, you know, they don't have that patience and they can't look into the future. You know, going back to when I started as a U90, you know, my goal was never to get to World's Strongest Man. I never even thought of that, to be honest. It was, you know, for me, I sucked at strongman when I started. I took last place in the first 8 comps I did. So, like, I really sucked.
Wow. What made you go to the 9th competition?
Well, so that's, you know, I tell people this all the time. It's like, my goal wasn't to get to Worlds. My first goal was don't fucking take last place. And on the 9th competition, I did that. And then it was...
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. And then it was, let's not zero an event. Because up until then, I had zeroed at least one event at every contest I'd done. And I did that on the 14th competition I did.
Wow.
And then it was, let's try to podium. And that happened on the 17th show. You know, so it was all these like small incremental goals over the course of time that got me to this level. You know, after I'd podiumed, it was, okay, let's go to nationals, see how I do. Then it was, okay, let's go for a pro card. And it wasn't until like 2016, really, when I realized I could be a heavyweight and go to World's Strongest Man. So I had been doing the sport for 7 years already before I even considered going to Worlds.
Cool. I like that.
And I think a lot of people, they don't think that way. You know, I think people, you know, look at us, at what we're doing in strongman, they're like, I want to go to Worlds, right, when they get into the sport. And to me, I think that's, you know, kind of a way of shooting yourself in the foot because there's so many things that need to happen in between the time of you starting and getting to World's Strongest Man. And people don't think about that and they don't want to realize it. But I think that's the way to ultimately be most successful and have the longest career.
Well, you weren't, I wouldn't say that, it sounds like it wasn't that you were looking at the fact that, like, there's all these million things that I've got to do before I can be World's Strongest Man. you were setting yourself a goal. And I love that what you were doing with that is so amazing. I'm going to bloody remember this after this podcast together. If you'd have been taken into account, like the other people at that event, the people that finished one place above you, two, and all the way up to the first place, and you focused on them, you'd have never have gone to a second event or a 9th event or a 14th event or a 17th event. Your goal was, what can I do? And if my first goal is don't finish last, I'm going to work hard until I get that goal. And I think so many people would sit there and they would consider it beneath them to set the goal of, I don't want to finish last. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And I think I catch myself doing that all the time, like with regard to training or work. Yeah, that's an amazing realization. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and it it's funny, like that mindset actually didn't even dawn on me until about last year. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. Back then I just thought I was having fun and found a sport that I love. So I'm just going to keep doing it until I get good at it.
Yeah.
And then looking back and I'm like, son of a bitch, I was actually pretty smart.
Yeah, you can give yourself a pat on the back for that one, I think. So being conscious of, we are 55 minutes into this podcast. I'm going to try and wrap some things up together. And I tend to ask people the same 3 questions towards the end of any interview I do. Essentially, your answers might be more unique because of the unique nature of what you do, but from if being physically well or having physical wellness, what would you say you do on a regular basis that you value highly that keeps you at a peak level, if that makes sense?
So something I started doing about a year ago is I do weekly. So on top of my physio session every week, I do recovery workouts. And I say workout very loosely, aka I go to a pool, and I will act like I know how to swim for about 20 to 30 minutes. Just some really light cardio, takes some stress off the joints. And I say swim, I'll essentially swim the length of a pool, then I'll walk back because the pool's not that deep at the gym I go to. I'm not a gifted swimmer whatsoever. So, but just doing that alone, I found helps keep inflammation down for me. My body feels good when I do it. And so I'll hit the pool. After that, I'll hop in a hot tub, and just kind of relax. And then I'll also hit the sauna. And that's what I call my recovery workout. It takes about an hour and a half. I do that 3 to 4 times a week on top of my gym sessions. And that's made a big difference in just the way my body feels. It's I had a big deadlift session this week and felt like complete crap for the last 3 days. But doing that has kind of progressed my my recovery and made me feel a little bit better every day.
I should nod you in the direction of, I don't know if you've ever listened to them before, but interviews that Joe Rogan's done with a lady named Rhonda Patrick. So she was one of the people that, with the wonders of today's modern internet, like podcasts and YouTube and so on and so forth, I first heard of her through Tim Ferriss's blog and podcast. Basically, she loves to talk about heat shock proteins and the amazing benefits of the sauna. And I've no doubt that some of the reason why you're doing well probably ties in well with what she talks about. And I'm sure if you listened or got the chance to talk to her, she'd be able to tell you why that recovery workout makes you feel so much better. One of the questions I was really keen to ask you, given that, everything that you've been famous for over the last kind of 5 years, was mental wellness, managing everything that you've had to do. Strongman sounds like an unbelievably tough sport. You said it perfectly. There are not a large number of world-class strongman athletes. There's a reason for that. Same as any strong event, like you touched on. CrossFit athletes represent a tiny percentage of planet Earth. Olympic weightlifters, as an example, represent a tiny percentage of planet Earth. So there's all that to deal with. And the fact that you were doing a crazy job with the working hours that you did and trying to fit all of this in, and then coming out and being, like you said, you're the only openly gay strongman, right? World level. There's no one else.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
like, how on earth have you managed your mental game? Like, what on earth do you do?
I think for me, I've always been told I'm like mature for my age ever since I was a young kid. And, going back to me coming out, when I came out, my main motivation was because I was dating a guy who had been out since he was 17 years old, 18 years old. And I didn't feel it was fair for him to be in a relationship with somebody who was still closeted. By that time, I was 22 years old. And I kind of had this mentality I was like, you know what? I'm coming out. If you don't like it, go fuck yourself. And that was friends, family. I didn't care. I was ready to finally be me for the first time. And same went for strongman. I was like, whatever. If people don't like it, they can suck it. I don't care. And that's kind of been my mentality the whole time. I'm weird, I guess. I've never taken things personally.
No, it's cool. It's cool. I've got a friend like you. I have a friend like you with that, and I admire him for it all the time.
Yeah, and I get asked this question a lot. I speak at schools a lot, and that's like the kids ask me all the time, like, how do you deal with the negative stuff? And to me, it's what I said before, I kind of channel it into a positive avenue and use it in my training and use it as a motivator to be better. And ultimately, like, I end up feeling sorry for all those people that are talking shit to me because they aren't opening up their eyes to, the amazing things that the world has to offer. Adding in my life to working a full-time job where I was working almost 60 hours a week. And being in a relationship and going into grad school and then, traveling all over the world. Like I said, I've just always had this expectation of, I guess, greatness out of myself. And my mindset was if I could work and provide a great, living environment for my family while doing strongman, that's what I was going to do. But I was never satisfied with just being where I was. I always wanted to go somewhere better. And that's where these small attainable goals kept happening. Even when I was a 105 kid, 105 pro, it was okay. ASM, great. America's Strongest Man, awesome. Took second place. Second place the year after in 2015 as well. And then 2016, I took, top 5 at 105 Worlds. And then it was the log press championship. So it was just always building up. And during that time, I was being promoted in my career, so I was a strength conditioning coach, and then it was an assistant director of sports medicine, and then the director of sports medicine, all while still progressing in strongman as well. And it goes back to what I said before, is I'm just kind of a stubborn bitch. And I want, I expect certain things out of my life. And, when I kind of get the vision of what I want, I get tunnel vision. And I don't let anything get in my way of what I want to do. And I think that's why not making the finals at World's Strongest Man was such a hard pill to swallow this year, because that was my goal for months leading up to that contest. And to not fulfill it was hard. To say I have a new tenacity and excitement for 2020 is an understatement.
Yeah, it's cool, man. I'm going to be excited to see how you get on for sure. Like, yeah. Overall, then, Rob, how do you try and maintain balance? Like, how do you overall keep life well when you've got so much to juggle?
I think that boils down to one thing, and that's just happiness. I just try to be as happy as possible all the time, because if I'm not putting negative energy out into the world, and it's not coming to me, then, stress is so low. I think for me, spending so many years, trying to be straight and living, a stereotypical heterosexual life, I was, waking up every day, putting on a facade and pretending to be somebody I wasn't, and it was exhausting. And through coming out and realizing what I went through, for all those years, I realized how exhausting being upset really is. And, that's kind of been the big thing that's, led me forward, is there's no sense in staying angry. There's no sense in being upset about things you can't control. So just be happy, and it makes everything in life that much better. And that's why, I have so much fun meeting fans at the meet and greets at contests. And, that's why, not to toot my own horn, people from the crowds at World's Strongest Man were calling me the fan favorite. It was just because I like to have fun. I enjoy life. And I think that's why, that's what's kept me so mentally healthy going through these past years. I really value what I've been able to do in my career. I really don't take for granted the fact that I get to travel the world and lift heavy shit for a living now. So yeah, I think it just comes down for me to just happiness. That's why I've been able to excel in the sport and, stay so mentally on top of everything.
Amazing. Where can people keep up to date with you, Rob? Where's the best place that you would direct people to after today?
Instagram is the way to go for me right now. I'm, currently developing a website, but it's under construction at the moment. Hope to be up by the new year. But Instagram is definitely the best way. You and I were talking before the podcast, and I try to be as diligent as possible when responding to people in my DMs and getting through, going through messages and stuff like that. And, there is an email link on my Instagram as well. So you can email me through that. That's probably the best avenue to go to get in touch with me.
Amazing. I'll be interested to hear if you still respond to, as you called it, the creepy Instagram messages as well as the nicer ones. But yeah, Rob, you are the absolute man for taking the time out to do this. I cannot appreciate it enough. Thank you so much for being on. And I don't even know what to say. I'm a bit speechless. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's been an absolute blast.
This is Dan Ball from Wellness Academy. I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you're listening right now. You'll find a link on the episode notes. Just tap or swipe over the cover art. You'll also see some offers from our sponsor, Lichfield Apart Hotel. Find them at lichfieldaparthotel.com, and we hope you'll support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've heard, we'd love it if you could give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe. Another way to support us is to answer a short survey at yourwellnessacademy.co.uk/survey and tell us what wellness topics you'd like to hear about. I'm your host, Dan Ball. Our producer is Scott Towns, created by our executive producer, Ben Heathcote for Wellness Academy.